Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 1:06 p.m. Start in a good way by acknowledging with gratitude that we live, work, and play traditional unceded territory of the Squamish. People have been stewards of these lands and waters surrounding the Quailaham, Bowen Island. Welcome to the Bowen Island Municipality meeting for Monday, November 27th, 2023. Thank you for joining. I'm Andrew Leonard, the Mayor of Bowen Island Municipality and the chair of this meeting. I'd like to start by introducing, for those of you that might be new to visiting or watching council, the elected members of our council here. Starting on my far left, we have Councillor John Saunders. His right is Councillor Tim Wake, followed by Councillor Alison Morse. And to my far right is Councillor Sue Ellen Fast, Councillor Judy Getty, and joining us online is Councillor Alex Jurgensen. We're also joined by members of our professional staff here this afternoon who will be presenting reports and statements to council, including our Chief Administrative Officer, Liam Edwards, and our Corporate Officer, Sophie Insignia. And this meeting is being recorded and live streamed, so when members of the public speak during the question and answer period or the public comment section of this meeting, your presence and voice will be included in the permanent recording of the meeting, which is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca or on our YouTube channel, which is streaming to the masses right now. This council meeting is an official forum for the conducting of business of local government. We all love our home. We are all passionate about what happens here. And I'd encourage everyone to maintain a constructive and respectful tone during the meeting and to direct comments for council during the public comment and question and answer period of the meeting to myself. The agenda and full council package for this afternoon's meeting is available at bowenislandmunicipality.ca if you're following in the gallery or online. And with that, I will look to the corporate officer for the introduction of any late items on our agenda today.
So there's just one on-table item this afternoon, and it was circulated by email, but that's a recommendation to move into a closed meeting immediately following the regular council meeting under sections 90, subsection 1, K, and L of the community charter. And this goes in at 4.6.
With that, I will look for a motion to approve the agenda and the on-table items for November 27th, 2023, moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Moving on to public comments, I will look to our corporate officer. How many public comments do we have today?
Yes, so we have a class from IPS joining us today, and there are 7 students who would like to make public comments this morning.
Okay. So we will do 2 minutes each for each public comment. And the corporate officer, for those who are new to public comments, the corporate officer will set a timer for 1 minute and 45 seconds. So when you hear that timer go off, you've got an additional 15 seconds to really wrap up your last points, make your ask to council. And then we'll go from there. Public comments are really an opportunity for the community and the public to make statements to council. There's not a lot of back and forth during public comments. Our job here as your elected representatives are just to receive what you might tell us. We might ask some clarifying questions, but we don't usually get into debate or discussion. It's just for us to hear what you're saying and to receive it formally. And with that, I will look to our first speaker.
So that would be Stella Kay.
All right, Stella, come on up. And feel free to grab a seat. You know, the time doesn't start until you speak, so whenever you're ready and feeling comfortable, you can go ahead.
Is there a public shelter for homeless people to go?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think we can answer some questions here from IPS, so I will refer that to staff.
Unfortunately, on Bowen Island, we don't have a shelter like a lot of other municipalities might have, and that's in part because of our size. Like, we're a relatively small community, but we do have the ability to open up some spaces for extreme weather events, because we do know that there are some homeless people and what we would call housing vulnerable people on Bowen. And so if it's extremely cold, we can open up the library, for example, for a warming center, or the same in the summer, sometimes as a cooling center. But we don't have an actual shelter. We have worked in partnership with the Little Red Church, for example, in the past to also provide space there. But there hasn't been a lot of uptake when we have done that type of thing.
Thank you, Stella.
Okay, next we have another Stella, Stella Pilarski.
Stella.
Hi, Stella. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. So, on Bowen, there is no public pool. And this is kind of annoying because unless you've been invited, you have to swim in the ocean, which actually isn't too bad, but it isn't as safe as having a public pool. And you can't go swimming in the ocean anymore during winter because then you would get hypothermia and die. You know? So, and it would be just a lot more fun if we had a public pool, so where we can all go swimming all year round, and it would be a lot safer. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate having you here and having you voice them to us. Thank you.
Next we have Liam. Liam O.
Hi, Liam. Welcome.
What I wanted was, I think it would be really cool once the community center's finished to put a stone ping pong table out with a metal net. I think it would be very fun because there is a ping pong table, but it's at the TBCA and not all people are members. And how this would work, you know how there's a box with a load of chess pieces just across from it? We could do the same with ping pong balls and paddles. So I think that would be really fun. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That is a very helpful piece of feedback, and I appreciate the naming of something you'd like to see in a very specific and tangible way. So that's something that our staff can take back as a recommendation to the Recreation Department. Thank you, Liam.
Thanks.
Next we have Julian B.
Hi, Julian. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you. So there are some kids, as you know, at IPS are off island, and when we're waiting for the ferry, we only have like that little shelter right by the ferry. So what I was hoping was to just get like maybe an upgrade to, because like sometimes it'll be full of like off island kids, and then some, maybe if it's like really cold or it's rainy, you might have to sit in the rain. So if it was in like, if we could get an upgrade, it would be much more convenient to wait for the ferry if it's like delayed or something.
Okay. Do you have any sense of what an upgrade like that would look like, or what would you like to see there?
Well, probably like some chairs that we could sit on, because it's like maybe the wood's wet sometimes, or I didn't make up any ideas of that, but yeah, I don't have much ideas.
That's okay. I mean, even voicing the start of a project is a really great alternative, and I would encourage you, if you do have more ideas, you could write Mayor and Council. There's also the Bowen Island Community Foundation, which is in the audience right now, which is a great partner for these types of things as well. So thank you for being here and sharing your opinion with us.
You might also refer them to the Ferry Advisory Committee.
The Ferry Advisory Committee as well, which is part of BC Ferries.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next we have Bowen G.
Hello. I was just wondering, like, if you're going to like build the campsite, like the park for the campsite, and like I was just wondering, cause when it was going to be built, if it was going to be built.
Right?
Yeah.
That is a great question and a frequent one that we get. The campsite and the proposed campground at Cape Roger Curtis is a project that has or would have a lot of impact on our community. So there's what would happen within the land and the campsite, the 240 acres out there. But part of the working through with Metro Vancouver, if a campsite and campground would happen, would be how do we address the impacts to the island based on that? So we know, for example, and it depends on who you talk to, what those impacts are. So as an example, folks that I know who commute to and from the island and who need to access the mainland on a regular basis, stressing the ferry out at those peak times when the ferry is already overloaded is a concern. For folks that I speak to who are involved at the Bowen Island Conservancy, for example, who have the Wild Coast Nature Refuge right beside the proposed park, there's questions about how do we manage and mitigate some of the environmental impacts, like on those coastal bluffs and on water and on resources that might happen within the park. For residents on White Sails, which is the main road entrance into the park, there's questions about traffic and what that would mean to for the kids and families who are using the streets and the roads. So it's a project that has a lot of complex issues associated with it. And until we work those out and find some partnership and collaboration with Metro Vancouver to mitigate those impacts and address them in a way that it feels good and sustainable and nourishing for our community, the timeline of when it will come to fruition or come to be is still very much uncertain.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, yes, Councillor Getty.
For camping, one of the things that I was involved with before was the Neighborhood Emergency Response Program. And if you have a tent and you haven't used it for a while, then I would highly, not now because it's freezing, but highly recommend that you practice putting it up so that if we do need to have extra accommodation, that you know how to work your tent. You like camping?
Yeah, I do like camping.
Right. Once you get yours figured out, you can come over and help me figure out mine.
Right on. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for your time.
Next we have Wyatt S.
Hi. I live by King Edward Bay, and I think we need more stores by that place because I really don't want to drive 40 minutes just to pick up Blanket Cookie.
You're driving?
Well, my mom.
Okay. So more stores and businesses in the King Edward Bay area?
Spread them across the island, not like in one place.
Right. Okay.
Thank you.
Something that I would encourage, if you're interested in that type of thing, we as a municipality are due to update and rewrite or reshape our official community plan. And what an official community plan does, it sets out the vision for what a community looks like, and what its land use looks like, what its relationship to the environment looks like, what its relationship between residents looks like. And that's going to be an exciting process where we're going to be looking for all corners of the island to participate. Whether your youth or west side, north side, wherever you are on the island, and there will be the opportunity for you to voice your opinion in that. So I would definitely pay attention to what's coming up with our official community plan, and if you have feedback about where things should go and how we should use the land, absolutely, we'd love to hear from you, Wyatt. Thank you, Councillor Fast.
I just was going to say same about the official community plan is actually sort of a way to use land on the island in the future. And so everybody gets to pitch in on that in this participatory democracy that we've got. We've got input from members of the public like you're giving us, and we've got us elected folks, and we've got the professional staff. And then together, all of us look to the official community plan that we make together. So keep an eye out in the next couple of years for opportunities. I know we also have gone out particularly to get youth input for the parks plan about parks and trails and things. And so anytime, if you sign up to get emails or whatever, but keep an eye out because we're looking for all kinds of input from the community. So that's great. Thank you for everybody for chiming in. I think I'm not sure if you're the last one. Thank you.
Thank you, Wayne.
Thank you for your time.
We have one more today. It's Amaya.
Hi, Amaya.
I was wondering, right by our school, us fairy kids, when we walk down through this bridge, there's two things about it. It's slowly sinking, and it gets really icy. So like sometimes you'll slip, and it's not very fun. And I was just wondering when you guys are gonna fix the bridge.
That is a great question about my favorite term called infrastructure. And I will turn it over to our staff to give you an answer on the Carter Road. That's the Carter Road Bridge. Huh?
Yeah, that's the Carter Road Bridge, yeah. Yeah, we've been aware of that and it's visible now, the sinking of it. And the stringers that support the bridge are where part of the problem is. And so it's still safe for use, but we do want to replace it. And it is part of the discussion for this council to consider for next year. So it will be brought forward as a project for consideration, but it's a very expensive project. Bridges are very expensive, and in part why they're so expensive because you're working in and about the stream, which is a very sensitive habitat and ecology, and so we've got to be really careful. And so council has a tough decision to make around all of the projects it's going to be looking at for next year, but this is one of the ones on the list. And so if not next year, sometime soon, because we definitely know it needs to be replaced. Yeah. And for the slippiness, that's something that we try to stay on top of in terms of getting salt down. I've noticed the mornings in the last week or so have been real slippy roads with the frost and stuff. And but it can be hard to get to all the roads and all the little spots on this big island of ours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for today.
Well, thank you to our speakers and particularly for showing up here today as a class. Something that you may not know about Bowen Island and our local government here is that we have a rich and robust culture of participatory democracy here. We have some of the highest participation. Sorry, there's some charades happening in the background here.
Tilt the camera up a tiny bit.
Tilt the camera up a tiny bit?
I was so concerned.
Okay. Thanks. And I just really appreciate you coming to visit us here in the council chambers. To share your thoughts, ask your questions, and share your opinions. And I would say, anytime you want to be involved, feel free to reach out, feel free to come back and see us, and feel free to come and make your voices heard because we like having you here. So thank you. With that, we will move on to the next part of our agenda. Section 3, delegations, 3.1. We have the Bowen Island Community Foundation regarding Bowen Island's 2023 Vital Conversations. Need one more chair up there?
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for giving us some space to come and talk to you this afternoon about the 2023 Vital Conversations event that happened earlier this year, and now we had a lovely report as a result of that Vital Conversation. So we're going to tell you a little bit about what's in it and the outcome of it and how it will be used. So first of all, some introductions. I'm Kate Thomas-Peter and I'm the chair of the Bowen Island Community Foundation. My right is Richard Smith, who's the vice chair of the Community Foundations Board, and on his right is Holly Graff, who is the past chair of the Bowen Island Community Foundation and who was the event manager, I think is probably the best way of describing her.
Spark.
In light. a really important role in the vital conversations. And so just very briefly, what we'll do today, I'll just talk just for a moment or two. Richard will tell you a bit more about the process of the vital conversations, and Holly will go into a bit more detail about what's in the report and its outcomes. I think as everybody probably knows, but just to very quickly underline, what we do as a community foundation is to receive donations from the community of Bowen. We steward those donations and then they are granted back to the Bowen community for projects that improve the quality of life for all Bowen Islanders. That's so we are part of the Community Foundations of Canada, which is a federal organisation that supports community foundations across Canada. And the Community Foundations of Canada very much supports the idea that every community foundation should have a vital conversation with their supporting community. Sometimes it's called vital science, because that's actually the official title of it. Here on Bowen, we like to call it a vital conversation. So the purpose of Bowen's Vital Conversation event is to understand what the community feels are the important issues that will need to be tackled over the next few years. These vital conversations are turned into a written report, and we have paper copies for you today, if anybody who wants one. And also provided to you is a card that has the electronic link to the report. And we really would be grateful if you could forward that link to any organisation on Bowen or any individuals that you think may be interested in the report, or who you know may be considering seeking a grant from the Community Foundation in 2024. The Vital Conversation is really important for several reasons. First of all, it's a real opportunity for Bowen Islanders to come together to discuss their community needs. The issues raised, once they're distilled into the report, give guidance to the community leaders, not just to the foundation, but to any community leader, about what the important issues are for the community. When anybody's applying for a grant from the Community Foundation, they're asked to say which of the Vital Conversation priorities their project or idea fits into. And in this way, the Vital Conversation guides the granting strategy of the Community Foundation, which is one of our important functions. I think that's all I need to say by way of introduction. I'll hand over to Richard now, who will tell you a bit more about how Vital Conversations was put together here in Bowen.
Thank you. We did three things really to gather up the material for this report. In part because of COVID, we started with an online gathering. So normally we would do this face-to-face, but we did an online. The benefit of that for us was that it allowed us to get a much larger group of people from people who wouldn't otherwise be able to attend an in-person event. We did that in the spring of this year. We followed that up with a kind of a storytelling process with some fantastic professional storytellers, I guess, and they crafted the backbone of the third part of our research process, which was a live event with people, not so much representatives of organizations, but the everyday people of Bowen Island as far as we could do it. And we recruited some. We had an open call for people to attend, advertisements in the paper and so on. And so we ended up with about 50 people or so, and at tables had discussions on themes and topics. And then we were able to return that material plus the online material back to the storytellers who were able to help us craft this document. So it's good reading, I'd like to say, and also very informative. Informative for us, of course, in our fund disbursement process, but also informative for other people in their crafting of asks to us. And there's inevitably things in here that beyond the scope of the Community Foundation that they may be of interest to the municipality or to other groups. And Holly's going to tell you a bit about some of those things that we found.
Yes, thank you for having us again. We do like to sort of formally present the Vital Conversations findings to Council. as Kate and Richard have explained, the purpose of the Community Foundation and the purpose of the Vital Conversations event. Want to make it clear that the recommendations or the findings, the priorities from the Vital Conversations event and report are not meant to be areas where Bowen Island is not doing things well. Of course, there's areas where the community feels like more effort needs to be taken, more money granted, more people involved, but also identifying what Bowen Island does well and what we want to continue to do well. So it's not just we're not doing these things, this is what we need to do, but what makes Bowen special, what do we want to preserve and protect, and what do we want to prioritize in the next few years. So we got a clear picture of both the priorities and the opportunities. It's not a surprise. This is the third Vital Conversations. The first one was in 2014. The second one was in 2017. Not a surprise that a lot of the same priorities and opportunities came up. There were two new ones, but the ones that are consistent are youth and elders, the environment, mobility and transportation, community building, whether that's civil discourse, community gathering spaces, civic pride, or diversity and inclusion, healthcare and housing. I think probably these types of issues are common to every community. Two new opportunities and priorities came up. One is volunteerism. And again, I don't think Bowen is unique in that sense. The fact that we do see it a priority and an opportunity for people to volunteer and to become involved. And I think that's always a difficult balancing act. And then the second new priority is visitor management, and we term that a balancing act. And I think we're aware of some of the topics around visitor management. And we were very clear that in the Vital Conversations event, we weren't going to be talking about specific things that were happening right now. We didn't talk about the park. We talked about just the increase in visitors. And visitors is not just classic tourism, but it's our friends and family who come over on the ferry and things like that. So those are the two new priorities. Two priorities sort of dropped off of the list. And I think that's due to the fact that the community and different organizations have made great strides. One is the healthcare facility. That had been a major priority in years past, and thankfully that's about to be open. So that became less of a priority, as well as a community center, community gathering spaces. So that was very rewarding to see that strides were made in two areas. And again, like I mentioned, there's going to be some consistency in things. People are always going, or always should care about our elders and our youth and the environment and things like that. There was one area that we felt, and this was reflected back to us from the community, that very little had been accomplished in the area of housing for all. And obviously, I think most of us are aware that that's a very complex situation that requires the support of both public and private sector. And that makes it a very unique challenge, unlike some of the other ones. It shouldn't be a surprise that all of the priorities are interconnected. It's hard to have a diverse community if you don't have housing. And I'm sure you're well aware of all of that. So the two challenges that we've seen, I think a lot of communities are seeing that. Volunteerism, people not having the time, maybe their time is spent earning a living with work and with family, and that's a hard balancing act. And then the increasing post-COVID trend of increased regional visitation to Bowen. So I hope that this report is of interest to council, and some of the feedback that is contained in there can also be used in the upcoming OCP process, because we did try and get as broad and wide a range of voices to participate here. We valued our partnership in the community with our donors who allow us to sort of be a conduit for their philanthropic wishes. We're a partner to the local charitable and nonprofit sector, partnering with them for projects, and then a trusted partner for federal and provincial granting streams. And we've been able to utilize those over the past few years. So we appreciate the faith that has been placed in us as a community foundation in a small community. And we hope to deepen all of those in the coming years. And want to thank the municipality for being a partner with us as well. And I appreciate the fact that over the weekend there was the Headwater Park opening, and that was a lovely sort of a collaborative project. And so thank you to council and the municipality. So we are looking forward to future areas of collaboration with the municipality and the community in general. And I know that the board and vice chair and chair are happy to take any future questions about the foundation or the Vital Conversations report.
Thank you.
I'm happy to answer any questions, of course.
I'll open it up the floor here for questions. Councillor Morse, then Councillor Wake.
I was looking through the report over the weekend, and are the survey questions listed or available anywhere? And
They're not in the
summary?
report, but
Yeah.
I can certainly send you a copy,
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
I can't remember what they were, but it seems to me there might be some specifics and might be of use to us in our planning.
Yep, you could repeat questions in your own work. I'll get you a copy.
Councillor Wake.
Thank you very much. It's great work, and it's particularly helpful as we enter the OCP process, as we plan to. And I think it actually lays down a very good foundation for the direction we want to take. And I wonder if any of you or the foundation are planning to contribute and be involved in the OCP process.
It's not a topic that we have yet discussed, but we can do.
I think very welcome.
I think that we will be open to discussions, providing whatever we do is guided by our mandate.
Councillor Fast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm interested in I think this is the first Vital Conversations report that's been sort of open to everyone, or where you were aiming
More
for
open, yeah.
more open. Okay, because my question is the online survey part, was that open to everybody?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you, because I just for the official community plan and for everything, we need all the voices, and I thank you for bringing this openness and this culture of philanthropy to all kinds of interactions in the community, including with us. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Councillor Getty.
I think it's very interesting that at this meeting today, we've got the presentation from the foundation in terms of the Vital Conversation. One of the pillars, or one of the main points, is the combination of seniors and youth. And at the same time, we've got maybe the first time a classroom from IPS. So if this is a nice convergence of energy in terms of people taking an interest of community affairs, that's heartening.
It is.
It's really good. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Getty. I have a question. I'm curious. First of all, I think this is amazing work, and the qualitative dialogue that it generates in terms of finding out what's important to the community and classifying it and bringing people together in a real constructive way is absolutely invaluable. And given that this is the third Vital Conversations have happened, am I correct? And the first one happened since the pandemic, since what we've seen in terms of growth. We've seen a lot of population growth and a lot of change on the island since 2017. I'm curious just if there are any observations you can share about whether that's changed some of the dialogue or changed the texture or quality of the feedback that you've received from residents.
I can speak to that. When we were doing the actual invitations, because we tried to identify different sort of demographics and classifications of people to invite to the day of event, one classification was new resident. So we did try and have that, and we did have new residents here at the event, because we figured that was really important. We can't just have the same people say, giving us the same feedback or a slightly different version. We wanted to have, and new residents represent a large demographic on the island. So yes, we did have that.
I could add that it's not only important to have those people, but they are a little bit more difficult to get involved. So as you think about OCP and so on, you really have to, not just open it up, because you'll get a lot of the people you've had before. For new residents, they may not even know that there is such a thing as an OCP, or in our case, that we even existed. So we had to sort of go the extra mile to include new residents. So I'd say it is a challenge for public organizations.
And just a follow up to that is the feedback that you're getting from new residents and the feedback even that we're getting from existing residents now congruent in large part with what we've heard in 2017 and previously?
Yeah, I would say it is congruent. I think the newer residents may not be aware of some of the history of what has led to now. Maybe has not been aware of some of the projects that have occurred and gotten us to where we are now. But they are equally as passionate about the island, and that's really heartening to see. And they also have the perspective, they've got a fresh perspective. They may not be quite as either jaded in one sense or have one kind of thinking that this is the way we have to do things. So that was heartening that the feedback was fairly consistent amongst, old timers and newcomers. We're choosing to say that that's positive.
Okay, thank you. And thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate the work that you've done and always a pleasure to have the Community Foundation in front of council. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have some cards that will have a QR code that can take you right to the online report. I think you have the thing in PDF format, but would anyone like the paper one?
Can you be sure to leave the cards at the
I'll leave the
counter?
cards, maybe.
Okay, thank you.
And you can just now okay. You have one? Good.
Okay. I do everything digitally.
Okay. Well, this will just be a temptation for you then.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 4, the consent agenda. I will look to council and councilors for any items that they would like to pull from the consent agenda. Second here.
12.12.
12.12.
Very hard to say. We have our department here to help.
12.17. Councilor Fast.
4.4. Just want to add a bit about send a letter.
Councilor Getty.
Sorry, did Councillor Saunders say 12.7?
17.
Oh, sorry. 12.7, please.
Any other items to pull from the consent agenda? Councilor Wick.
12.6 and 12.19.
Hey, it's a record. See nothing from Councilor Jurgensen. With that, I will look for a motion to adopt the balance of the consent agenda, moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Saunders. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Carries. We will do this in the order that appears on the agenda. So item 4.4, draft minutes of the Environment and Climate Action Committee meeting held October 30th, 2023. Councillor Fast, I will look to you for this one.
Thank you. This recommendation is straight from the committee, and I don't have any changes that I want to make to it, except I want to add at the very end where it says thereby be it resolved that we support the amendment. I want at the very end to say almost the same text as is in 9.2 or whatever the other 9.1, which is and write to the province with the resolution as per the, here it is, that council authorized the mayor to write to the province supporting the legalization of aquamation based on the template included in the letter from Aquamation BC, period.
Just look to our corporate officer to see if she's gotten that.
Not entirely. So that council authorized the mayor to write to the province
Supporting the legalization of aquamation based on the template letter included in the submission from Aquamation BC, or correspondence from aquamationbc.ca. Thank you. It was just because it was just this was just the motion from the committee.
Yep.
And it only asked council to pass the resolution, so I just want to add the bit about and send a letter including the resolution to the province.
So if I could just get the resolution portion read out, so not with the preamble, just the therefore be it resolved as it's in the council.
I just ask one question about the resolution.
Yep.
I'm noticing in the top, it refers to regarding the legalization of aquamation, but in the therefore be it resolved clause, it says to allow for alkaline hydrolysis. So
those are the same thing?
Well, I guess it's confusing to the reader. So if we're using alkaline hydrolysis in the therefore be it resolved resolution, that should be the same wording in the letter to the minister for sending this resolution.
It doesn't put alkaline hydrolysis is included in the whereases, but I hear you.
You got a favor?
It hasn't been seconded yet, so if you'd like to make that change before.
I think it would be fine for them both to be the same, and I would prefer to go with aquamation. So it would say, therefore be it resolved that Council of Bowen Island Municipality supports the amendment to the Cemetery, Interment and Funeral Services Act of BC, and or the regulations therein to allow for aquamation to be included as a permitted form of disposition of deceased persons in the province of British Columbia, and that council authorized the mayor to write to the province supporting the legalization of aquamation based on the template letter included in the correspondence received from aquamation.bc. And can I speak to my motion?
If it's seconded. Seconded by Councillor Wake. And yes, you can motivate on your motion.
Thank you. Just so people know what this means is that instead of only having the prospect of burial or cremation, which uses up a lot of carbon dioxide emissions, as you can imagine from the flames, people have asked me about other options. They don't want their last thing to be a big carbon emission. And so this is legal for pets. This is what aquamation means is sort of dissolving in a strong alkaline solution like lye or lime. And it's legal for pets in BC, and it's legal for human remains in other provinces. and it reduces carbon dioxide emissions by 95%. It's been something that funeral directors and businesses that have to do with helping people at the with family members at the end of life have been writing to the province with since 2012. And so they've reached out to us, and this is the recommendation from our committee. And people have been asking me about green burials or other things that they could do, other ways to go out with a good feeling, and so they're not polluting the environment. So that's why I'm bringing this forward. The council referred it to this committee, and this is the committee's response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fast. Any discussion on this item? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 That carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to item 12.6, a letter from Matthew Redekop regarding leaf blowers dated November 16th. Council Wake for disposition.
I completely agree with Mr. Redekop on this issue, and it's been raised in many jurisdictions. To be clear, we're talking about fossil fuel powered leaf blowers, not electric ones, which are quieter. And so I would really support referring this to staff to see if we can get a recommendation on how to proceed.
I'd suggest a referral to our next strategic priorities meeting.
Can I suggest we also might refer it to the Environment and Climate Action Committee?
Sure. So it sounds like a motion to refer to Council's next strategic priorities meeting, as well as a referral for information to the Environment and Climate Action Committee. Is there a second? Seconded by Councillor Fast. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 That carries unanimously. Item 12.7, letter from Tamsin Miley regarding referrals of the 2023 draft active transportation plan. Over to you, Councillor Saunders.
This was last.
That was. Oh, yep, JG, Judy Getty. Sorry, apologies. Over to you, Councillor Getty.
We had referred the active transportation plan at the last meeting to Finance Committee and Transportation Committee, and we forgot to mention the Accessibility Committee, which is appropriate. And Ms. Miley has written on behalf of Peter Williamson, who's a member of that committee, that it should have also been referred to that committee. So I'm formally asking that happen. We recommended a committee of the whole meeting to discuss the active transportation plan involving members of those various committees. So it's just, I think, dot the i's and cross the t's and make sure that they're formally included.
I'll look for the motion first. So
refer it to the Accessibility Committee, the active transportation plan.
Okay.
And include them in the invitation to the COW.
Okay. Is there a second?
No, because I did it already.
Well, I still think we should do the formal.
Okay, and fine, I'll second.
Okay, seconded. Any discussion?
I did it by email because I'm on the committee, so I asked Steph to put it in as an information thing.
Right. Okay.
I didn't think it was bad to do that.
But the motion's double-sided, is to refer it to them and to invite them to the COW meeting.
So I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And that carries unanimously. Thank you. Item 12.12, Gail Lytle regarding time-sensitive request regarding Bowen Island staffing dated November 16th. Councillor Morse.
I'm not totally understanding everything that is in the letter, but I'm concerned as to whether this will have an impact on the level of emergency response for medical issues. and what impact or extra work that might put on the fire department. So I guess I'm wanting to refer it to our chief and comment. And I noticed that the response from the province from, I guess, Leanne Heppel was not included in the on-table item. So I'm just concerned as to whether this will put more work onto our first responders, or cut back on the available service if we call 911 and need an ambulance.
Yeah, so we have had conversations with BC Emergency Services about this. Maybe I'll look to staff if there was comments on the 3 tiers of service where Bowen is going.
Yeah, I'll try my best. Thank you, Mayor. It is a complicated mix of different staffing options that are available to communities, in particular rural communities that don't currently have full-time first responders for ambulatory services. And what was on the table was these 3 different models, and the determination from the ambulance service for Bowen was that we would move to this full-time model. And I do know that Gail Little was reluctant to support that model and preferred this what's called mixed shift pattern model. But I'll be honest in that it's hard to decipher as to what the best solution is for Bowen, because I did speak directly with BC ambulance service staff at the Union of BC Municipalities about it, and they really pushed for the full-time model and advocated for that. And so it's hard to know what the best solution truly is for us. I trust Gail. I think she provides us with great service, and I really respect and appreciate the advice that she provides, and I hope she continues to do that. And but it's really hard for us to know at a staff level of the real subtle nuance differences between the models. It's hard to know or anticipate that this new full-time model would result in a reduction of service. It should, from my perspective, result in an increased level of service. But I do know that it would require something along the lines of 8 to 10 full-time equivalent staff to be able to provide that level of service. And that's where it could be really tough to find that staffing complement and the qualified staff to do that. And so there's some unknowns about moving away from our current model to this new model. So it may be that there are some challenges that are presented with this new full-time model, but I don't think that either model would greatly impact the level of service provided by our excellent fire department. And I don't think, and I hope that the chief or the deputy chief could correct me if I'm wrong, that either model would result in pulling them away from their duties more than what they currently might be pulled away from. So if I could ask the chief to weigh in on that, that would be great.
I'm thinking we need, I guess I'm pulling it because I think we need to understand what the options are. Are there 3 options or are there 2 there? Because there's some reference in here to a 0.75 mixed shift positions. So I don't, to me, having full-time is beneficial because they'll know the island, they'll know where to go. And right now, I mean, the last time I called the ambulance, it took them an hour to find our house.
Right. There are 3 options. There's one which is very similar to what we sort of currently have, which is like an on-call option, which is the lowest level of staffing support within your community. And that is not an option that anybody would recommend for our community. And then there's this mixed shift pattern model, which is closer to what we might have, and that's the model that Gail Little supports, and that essentially provides some stability in staffing for our current complement of folks that we have on the island. It provides them with enough regular time to make the job viable. But they are on call at certain times too, so they're not full-time. Moving to the full-time model, where I'm told it could be problematic is that it all of a sudden becomes attractive to perhaps people in the system that are nearing retirement and then want to take on a station that maybe is quieter than something in the big city. And so what the fear is that all of a sudden Bowen starts to attract qualified professionals from urban centers, but they don't actually live on Bowen. They don't necessarily intend to move to live on Bowen, and that could push out some of our less qualified but actual residents on the island.
So when are they gonna make the decisions as to what model to use?
I think they made the decision that they've actually are moving to the full-time model.
The full-time alpha model.
And so my understanding is that Gail is advocating for to shift to the other model.
To reconsider.
To reconsider that.
Is that something for us to reconsider? Because you just said they made that decision.
It is ultimately,
We made it.
it's ultimately BC Health Services decision and not our decision. We can advocate for one or the other and share our perspectives on what our preferences are, but ultimately they make the decision.
And this, we may be past the point where this is valuable. I think that the letter that she sent is fairly detailed here. I'm wondering if there's any value in having Ms. Lytle present the argument to council. I just for discussion purposes, I don't know if there's value in doing that, but
It could be, my concern is that it's the deployment of an emergency service.
Yeah.
So, and this seems clearly a labor issue, and one that it's not necessarily our wheelhouse. So, we wouldn't necessarily get involved in the labor of how the RCMP is staffing their detachment down to a shift level. And I think in the absence of that expertise and that knowledge, it makes it difficult for a council to advocate for a specific labor arrangement.
no, I can accept that. That makes sense.
I just want us to advocate to make sure we're getting the best possible service for Bowen.
Right.
And
So-
if the full-time is the best service, then let's go with it. If it's 0.75 is a better service, then let's advocate for that.
My understanding from the province and the communication that I've had with the province is that the decision is made already and that we are currently slated for the full-time alpha, which is the top level of service that can be provided.
And that's gonna be people that will be here and they'll understand the island and they'll know where to go and all that sort of stuff.
Well,
When it says full-time, is it full-time like for the shift or is somebody gonna be assigned here for a year? And they'll get to know the island.
I'm not clear on that, and I think commenting on that, that's something that BC Emergency Services would have to comment on directly in terms of speculating who comes here, who's a resident, who's not a resident. I think that's a very difficult.
Well, if they're from off island, but they're the person that comes every day, that's fine. They'll get to know where the service is. And I don't want to have a repeat of having to wait an hour for an ambulance to find my house.
And perhaps that's something staff can liaise with BC Emergency Services on, figure out what the complement of staff will be and how permanent that staff would be in terms of residency. Any other questions on this piece before I look for a motion to receive?
Just
That's
while
fast.
we're on the topic of health, my little indicator of how much of each other's air we're breathing is in the red. So can I ask you guys to open that window a little wider at the back, please? We can get more ventilation. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, so a motion to receive 12.12. Councillor Saunders, seconded by Councillor Morse. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. Moving on to 12.17, BC Ferry Service Notice regarding Snug Cove berth upgrades dated November 1st. Councillor Saunders.
Thanks. In the notice, the company's asking customers to plan ahead for their travel during this time and is supporting customers during cancellation closes with water taxi, shuttle service on Bowen Island, and discounted or complimentary parking in North Shoe Bay, which is all well and good. We're only a little over a month away from those shutdowns occurring, and I'd like us to, through staff or through council, I'm not sure which is the better way to do that, but to ask for more details about this. I don't have a lot of confidence in a vague to be determined, which is really what I'm, we'll put this up there eventually on site. And there's a lot of people rely on that last ferry home on Thursdays. I'm one of them, so I have a personal interest in this. And so finding this out earlier rather than later is going to enable us to do the planning that they're saying, please go plan ahead. So I'd like to offer a motion along the lines that perhaps staff liaise with BC Ferries to get better, more timely information and that gives us a little more detail on what exactly they're planning in terms of water taxis, parking and bus service.
Okay. So it sounds like a motion to.
I've worded one if it.
Absolutely. If you got one typed out, let's do that.
Whereas the upcoming construction and closures by BC Ferries will cause a high level of inconvenience for a number of Bowen Island residents. Move that staff request immediate clarification and further detail on the water taxi, parking and bus services changes to be implemented by BC Ferries during the construction period.
And to report back to council.
And to report back to council.
Seconded by Councillor Getty. Just for the benefit of our corporate officer, I'm going to let her fingers catch up. Did we able to get all that?
That's good.
Yep, I can refer back to the video as well.
Okay. It's been seconded. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
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 And that carries unanimously. Thank you. And our last item on the consent agenda, item 12.19, Nigel Malkin regarding Housing Advisory Committee Tourism Bowen Island recommendations for short-term rentals. Over to Councillor Wake.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Malcolm has written us a letter about the upcoming issue, which I'm sure we're going to be discussing around not only housing, but short-term rentals and what the impact is and whether or not we're going to make any changes. And he's mentioning that or he's suggesting that the Housing Advisory Committee and Tourism Whistler will be meeting to talk about it. I would just like to.
Tourism Bowen, man.
I'm sorry. Well, I always do that. It's embedded in my brain. Sorry, thank you. I would encourage everybody to have a look at what Salt Spring Island is doing. I found out about this through a referral from Councillor Getty from the Islands Trust. Their website is saltspringsolutions, all one word, .com. And the headline at the top of their summary is building a more just, resilient, and sustainable community together. And they include in their discussion the impact of short-term rentals and ways to suggestions to resolve that. They're also having a webinar on Wednesday evening at 6:30, which is shown on the website, which looks very interesting. I'm planning to attend that.
And what is the disposition on this item? A move to receive?
Just the heads up.
Okay, great.
I hope that we receive it for information.
Second.
Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Zoom audio now. Aye.
Councillor Jurgensen, and then that carries unanimously. Zipping back up on our agenda here, looking to section 6, business arising from minutes. Thank you very much, our IPS students.
Thank you. I'm trying to be quiet. That's good.
Is that the code in that corner?
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you.
Item 6.1, use of proceeds of sale of old fire hall if sold. Bring it over to Kristen Watson, our Chief Financial Officer.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the rest of council. Following up on the presentation that you received from a delegation by BC Hydro at the last council meeting, November 14th council meeting. I believe they approached council indicating some interest in potentially purchasing the old fire hall site at 784 Grafton Road. I wanted to take this opportunity to advise council that there are some options that is available to council about what to do with proceeds of any sale if that were indeed to take place. The property has no debt attached to it, so it must be deposited to a reserve. We have 2 potential reserves that council could contemplate putting the proceeds in. One being the Land Opportunity Reserve and one being the Fire Protection Reserve Fund. Just as a sidebar piece, the property has been used by BC Hydro under license of occupation since January 1st of this year. The amount of the license, the annual fee for the license is $50,000 annually, and those monies have been deposited to the Fire Protection Reserve Fund. It's expected that pattern would continue, that those proceeds of the license would continue to be deposited to the Fire Protection Reserve Fund. Now, typically, when we dispose of assets, we use those assets to replace or renew assets that were acquired for similar purpose. So, for example, earlier this year, there have been 2 disposals of fleet trucks in the Public Works Department. All of those proceeds have been deposited to the Equipment Reserve Fund, and they will be used to fund replacement of similar or new replacement fleet vehicles. So I believe following past practice, it would make sense that were council to contemplate disposing of the old fire hall property at 784 Grafton Road, that those funds would be deposited to the Fire Protection Reserve Fund. Now, in my report, I have listed out several expenditures that are on the short to medium term horizon. They do total almost, more than $1.5 million of expenditures. So I think that it would be reasonable to expect that any of those proceeds, if it were sold, would be used to help offset the costs of these known new investments in equipment and safety gear that is needed in the medium to short term. So I have put together a recommendation for council to consider, and that is to be it resolved that council, in the event that that there is a sale of the old fire hall property, that all of the sales proceeds would be contributed to that Fire Protection Reserve Fund, and to make that decision early on in the process, just to signal to the community what council's intent is.
Thank you, Ms. Watson. Any questions, Councillor Morse?
I went and read the sections of the community charter, but I forgot to go and read the Land Opportunity Reserve Fund, which I just did just now. I had a little bit of problem with thinking we would be using land sales to pay for equipment. But I'm looking at the Land Opportunity Reserve Fund, and I think this may cause us a problem. The Chief Financial Officer must deposit to the Land Opportunity Reserve Fund net proceeds from the sale of land and improvements owned by the municipality. So I'm not sure if we, because of the word must in 2.2 of the Land Opportunity Reserve Fund, if we can. And the other option is that the money earned by the the use of the money can be to acquire land and improvements or repay municipal debt. But that's municipal debt arising from the acquisition of property. So is the acquisition of property the building of the fire hall, and could we use the money to repay the debt from the building of the fire hall? So I've got a few questions, and the way it's worded right, I fully agree that the money should be used for fire department purposes. And repaying the debt to build the hall is one of those things, and then they'll get extra money every year from the interest for not having to pay on that debt. So, in operating funds. So I'm not sure that I can support the resolution the way it is. And so maybe we should defer it to give it a little more thought.
Thank you. I see two of our officers with their hands up, so I'll let you folks rock, paper, scissors to see who goes first.
Go ahead. Okay. The charter requirements for land that is unencumbered by debt is that the proceeds go into a reserve. So it doesn't necessarily have to go into the land reserve. If our language in the land reserve, Opportunity Land Reserve Fund bylaw is at conflict with what's in the charter, then I would recommend that we amend that to may instead of must. That would address that issue that
But we can't do all that today, which is why I'm saying we need to defer.
The piece around the debt, so it's only land sold that is attached to some debt that must be used to extinguish that debt. So any land that's free and unencumbered may be sold without a requirement to extinguish debt related to another land purchase somewhere.
3.2.2 of our reserve fund says repay municipal debt arising from the acquisition of property, not the property that was sold. Build a fire hall.
Torcio?
So, thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering if the intention of the establishment of that bylaw 522 in 2020 was focused around what we call the community lands, or if it was really intended to encompass all municipal owned lands.
I can't remember, but the community lands are encumbered by debt, so it's sort of.
I thought that my sense and recollection of the creation of that bylaw with Raj Hare, our CFO at the time, was that.
I haven't gone back and looked at the stats.
Can I let him finish?
My recollection was that it was intended for the what we deem the community lands, lot 1, 2, and 3.
Councilor Getty?
3.2 of bylaw 52220 is, makes difference between 3.2.1 acquire land and improvements, and 3.2.2 is repay municipal debt arising from acquisition of property. So there's no definition section in terms of what's the difference between, we know what land is, but improvements or property. So it's probably wide open in terms of debt.
Okay.
I move to defer.
Councilor Fast was on the speakers list, so before we get a motion on the floor, I'll clear the speakers list.
Thank you. I appreciate this being in front of us now. I think it's a good way, as staff have indicated, to indicate council's thinking to the community in terms of how we might be looking at this, or how individual councillors might be thinking about it. I mentioned when the Community Foundation was here about the culture of philanthropy, and I think we've got a duty to donors or people who have helped the community in the past to think about why they made those significant contributions, and I really like this recommendation that if the land is ever sold, that it be supporting the fighting function. The safety of the community and the provision of fire protection services on Bowen. So I like the idea, and I'd be prepared to move the motion. So I'm going to move the motion now, if I may.
Just a quick question of process, given Councillor Morris's concerns. Is there anything that would prevent us from adding language under this recommendation that would say something along the lines of pending any necessary amendments to bylaw number 522?
Okay.
I think that would be worth considering and adding, because when I look at bylaw 522, I think we could have some clarifying statements in there to make sure it's really clear in terms of the use of these proceeds.
Sorry?
We could have some
Nice little conversation.
we could have some clarifying statements in there, bylaw 522, just to be crystal clear on the use of proceeds from the sale of lands.
And before the mover, just because I do want to honor Councillor Morris's intention as she signaled the desire to make a motion first. Would that satisfy your concerns, Councillor Morris? If there was
I am not a fan of making decisions on the fly and changing reserve funds and policy on the fly. I think we all agree that the money from the fire hall should be used somehow for existing fire hall or fire hall services. So, but to get it right, what's wrong with deferring for 2 weeks? Make sure we've got both bylaws and we do the two of them together. Because signaling an intention to change the other thing isn't necessarily right. And I would like to have the debate about discussing whether we should use it to pay off the debt on the existing fire hall, which will free up money, which could then be directed. The same amount of tax revenue that's needed to generate the interest would be put into fire hall operations or equipment reserve every year. We used to put a big hunk of money into the equipment reserve every year, which we haven't been doing.
again, battle between the officers?
Thank you, Mayor. I think given our own council procedure bylaw, it may be difficult to turn this around and bring it back in 2 weeks because we publish the agenda just next Monday. So that can be a tough thing to do, to turn it around in that time period. So as soon as it would come back would be in January. And from my understanding, the next opportunity to put a lump sum down against the debt for the fire hall is many years out. Probably, I think about 8 years.
Yeah, 8 years.
8 years out. And so we would be sitting on those funds for that time period before we. So it's not like a typical mortgage where you may have terms that allow you every year to put a certain percentage down against your mortgage. The terms with the MFA are different. So.
Well, I will move to defer to the next council meeting.
Press CMD plus tilde.
I second.
So it's moved and seconded to postpone until the next council meeting. Any discussion on postponement? Councillor Wake?
I think this issue is before the community, and I think there's some real concern about the outcome. And I think waiting when we have a pretty good sense here of how this is going to go, if we make it subject to, then it can still be reversed if it's going to be reversed. But I think we should move forward with it, so I won't be supporting this motion.
Can I ask one more question?
I'm going to look to, if there's any other speakers before we have a motion to postpone, and then I'll go back to you, Councillor Morris. Okay, seeing that, Councillor Morris?
Can the money from the Fire Protection Reserve Fund be transferred to the Land Reserve Fund or used to pay off the debt for building a new fire hall?
By bylaw, if council determines that the funds are no longer needed in the Fire Protection Reserve Fund, they can make that decision to transfer by bylaw.
I still want to think about that one a bit more. Thank you.
So any other debate or comments on postponement? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Audio now muted.
All opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. So Councillor Saunders, Wake, Fast, and Mayor Leonard opposed, and motion is defeated. Councillor Fast, if you'd like to make a motion.
Yes, thank you. I would like to move that whereas any proceeds of sale of the old fire hall property at 784 Grafton Road may be deposited to either the Land Opportunity Reserve Fund or the Fire Protection Reserve Fund. Therefore, be it resolved that should council decide to sell the old fire hall property, that all sales proceeds be contributed to the Fire Protection Reserve Fund to support continued provision of fire protection services on Bowen Island, pending any necessary amendments to bylaw number 522.
Moved. Seconded by Councillor Wake. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
I'm voting, I'm opposed because the wording of the resolution isn't right, because it's incorrect in the first whereas. And I think the wise thing to do might be to consider paying off the debt.
Councillor Morse opposed, and apologies, Councillor Jurgensen, I didn't hear your vote.
Audio now unmuted.
In this case, I am opposed.
Councillor Morse and Councillor Jurgensen opposed, motion carries.
Thank you.
Item 8.1, council meeting and acting mayor schedule. I don't think we need a report on this. However, the corporate officer is here to answer any questions before the recommendation or disposition is moved. Seeing no questions, could I have a motion on the floor, please? Yes, Councillor Getty.
The September 9th meeting, I thought there was a conflict, and I'm wondering if there's a mistake in the, whether it should be September 16th.
September 9th is the second Monday.
Might be around UBCM.
Sorry?
I think that's the.
Or something.
BCM is the September 16th week.
There was a regular council meeting and a committee of the whole.
Oh, I have a governance committee meeting. And I believe we scheduled 2 meetings that day. Was that the recommendation?
Yes.
For the night?
Typically, we would have had the committee of the whole the following Monday, but we'll be at the union.
So Monday, September 9th is a regular council meeting and a committee of the whole on this list. So both on the one day, as opposed to the committee of the whole being in between the other two. So I thought possibly it was a mistake and it should have been September the 16th for committee of the whole. And if they're both on September the 9th, then I have a conflict. The governance committee with trust.
The 16th will be at the Union of BC Municipalities, so we won't be having any committee of the wholes that week. So,
Do we need to have the committee of the whole on the 9th? Why don't we just have
No.
a regular council meeting on the 9th and scratch the committee of the whole?
we can always schedule one if needed. We're just trying to pre-schedule them.
Yeah, I know.
And so we could delete this one, and if we feel that as we're approaching, we need one and there's time, we can set one up.
So the September committee of the whole is slated to be a strategic.
Sorry?
The September 9th committee of the whole is slated to be a strategic priorities meeting.
And I believe it's the capital projects update.
Oh, right.
Are there committee, sorry,
Councillor
are
Saunders.
there committee of the whole meetings scheduled, like, or are we just blocking that time off in case there's a need for a committee of the whole, or is there something actually pegged in for each one of those right now?
Right, so there's pieces pegged in for some of them, but coming back to our discussions of strategic planning, we're just putting the bookmarks in the calendar now so that we're not organizing them all on the fly.
That's what I thought, yeah.
What if we were to schedule the committee of the whole for another day that week? For the, that would be the capital projects update in advance of the initial budget meetings and the strategic planning meeting, which happens in October.
If that's the week before UBCM, we're gonna be, working hard on that one as opposed to having, we're gonna be hashing that out at a committee of the whole meeting? Is that the forum or is that
Oh,
going?
no, all our stuff would have gone in long before that.
The week before UBCM, we would have a council meeting where we would be strategizing the meet, but we would have submitted all and got confirmation of our meetings from the province, but we would need to have a.
So we're scheduling a regular council meeting for the 9th.
Yes.
Okay, and the committee of the whole, on top of that, would be to have a discussion about some topic and more general, more broadly. And is it likely that we're going to be doing that the week before UBCM?
So to be clear, so the September 9th Committee of the Whole, so that does have a topic associated with it already. It would be the capital projects update that we received, similar to the one that we received this fall. That happens prior to our next month where we would get into strategic planning. So that we would have the capital projects update and then be able to be literate on that as we go into strategic planning. Before we get too bogged down, I mean, this is a committee of the whole meeting that's currently scheduled 10 weeks from now, and there's nothing preventing us from working through this by email unless everybody has the desire to pull out calendars and start scheduling September. Councilor Wake?
It just seems to me like that sounds like a lot for one day.
Right.
So, I'd just like to see them separate.
Sure.
Somehow.
Is it?
So why don't we just schedule it for the 11th?
So we'll reschedule that one later in the week.
You picked the 11th.
September 11th.
Well, I would.
When is the September Trust Council meeting?
Folks, we're going to go one speaker at a time. Councilor Getty has her hand up. We're starting to get a little fuzzed out here for the structure of the council meeting, so I'll go to Councilor Getty.
If we could not publicize the September the 9th Committee of the Whole and work on some other substitute, if we think sounds like we're going to need one, but, when and how long and whatever. But if we start piling it up, multiple meetings on one day, that's also difficult.
So here's what I would recommend, is that we're not going to schedule the September 9th Committee of the Whole, and we'll deal with that at some later date in the next 10 months.
Please.
That works? Okay. Any other questions about the schedule or comments about the schedule, conflicts about the schedule? Councilor Morse?
I was wondering if we really wanted to schedule a council meeting for Monday, December the 23rd.
Good point.
Yeah, I would be inclined, even if that was approved, I would likely cancel it.
Yeah.
So let's leave it off. If we're desperate and we need to have something, then there is the week before.
Council Christmas party? Okay. Any other comments on schedule, questions on schedule? Or on the acting mayor schedule?
Sorry, I had a hand up, but
Oh, sorry, I can't see the hands on this screen, Councillor Jurgensen.
okay. No problem. Sorry about that.
So feel free, if you feel like I'm missing you, just jump in.
Okay. I do have one question about the acting mayor schedule, and that was I wasn't able to parse out which months I have.
April and December.
Okay, that's fine by me. Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions or comments, I will look for a motion that council approve its So we're saying that no September 9th committee of the whole and no December 23rd. Consider those changes made by unanimous consent unless there's any objection. Okay. Council approve its 2024 council meeting schedule and acting mayor schedule as outlined in the interim corporate officer's staff report.
As amended.
As amended, dated November 17th, 2023. Mover for that, moved by Councillor Getty, seconded by Councillor Saunders. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that carries. Thank you. Item 8.2, update from our CAO. Hand it over to Liam.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any updates around the capital projects other than the community center, which just continues to move forward. And we're having a lot of the meetings are now really focused on details, the finishing products that are going in and color coordination and things like that. And I was told this morning that we will be getting a update to the schedule this week, which I look forward to seeing and sharing with you and members of the public when I get that. I do anticipate that that new schedule will show a handover date as being pushed out from the current date, which is January 26th. I would imagine that's pushed out at least 4 weeks, if not more. So I'll be able to provide more information about that in December. So, I think I'd mentioned previously that we've been doing Emergency Operations Center training with all staff. This last month, it's been really fantastic getting everybody trained at a basic level and focusing in on the different functions of the EOC. And then next week, we will be having a full-scale exercise where we will be doing essentially like a dry run of an EOC. There won't be any sirens or any actual call-outs or leaving the EOC itself. But this will be the first time that I've been involved in on Bowen for an EOC exercise. And we may, depending on how that goes, we may be scheduling in the future an exercise where we actually activate some external activities like mimicking an evacuation or things like that. So, and that's it for my update.
Thank you. Councillor Getty, Councillor Fast, Councillor Wake.
At the Conservancy meeting at the school, a couple of people that had walked to the meeting and walked past were asking me when the exterior envelope was going to be completed. As the cold, nasty weather is on us.
Yes.
And there's some concerns in terms of, I think I heard something about there's some eaves but no downspouts, and that there's a bad snowfall that they're going to get pulled off, and then whether or not it's completely watertight without the exterior envelope, and that we don't want to have continuing problems later. Like I said, some deadlines now. So.
That's a very valid concern that I raise often, and just this morning we were talking about the additional cladding required to finish the building as well as the roofing material. And with a lot of the concerns we heard from the public about the oil canning on some of the cladding, we've been digging in trying to come up with a resolution to that, especially for the roof. We're assured by our architects and others that the oil canning is not a performance issue, it's an aesthetic issue, but nonetheless, we'd like to try to minimize that. So in terms of the building waterproofness, it is effectively watertight right now, even though it doesn't have the cladding on. But it is something that the longer it's left without the cladding and the roofing, then the more opportunity for failure or penetration is there. And so we want to get that on as soon as possible. So 100% agree. Trying to make sure that happens, but it's up to the builder.
Goes fast. Oh, sorry, Councilor Eady.
Why do we ask about it and complain about it and it doesn't happen?
So as with anything, there's multiple steps in the process to get something perhaps done. Ultimately, in these types of projects, when you sign on a contractor to do the project, it becomes their site and their project, and we're not in a position to tell them how to do their job. And so we can complain, we can say how and when and why is it not being done? But ultimately, it's their job and it's their responsibility. And currently, with the concern around the oil cladding and trying to resolve that issue of the oil cladding, involve a number of sub-trades to discuss what techniques could be used to eliminate or reduce the oil canning without actually changing the material, because moving to a higher grade metal material would be extremely costly. And so it's looking to what installation techniques could be used. It's a lot of back and forth between the sub-trades and the contractor and the architects and vice versa.
Councilor Fast.
Thank you. My question is about air cleaning in the new community center. We had a question at the accessibility advisory committee about what air cleaning methods would be used in the new community center, and some concern they didn't want anybody to be excluded by the need for infection control. So I was wondering, I know we've talked about this in past meetings, and I don't know if you have the details. I did send you an email, but I think it was while you were away. And maybe staff are going to answer it, but if you've got something at the, we've got an accessibility committee meeting next week, and I could pass along any information.
Yeah, I can't speak to the detailed standards of that. So I can forward that to our architects to provide the detailed response.
Okay, that would be great. Do you want me to send it to you again?
I know I can find it.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilor Wake and then Councilor Morse.
Two questions. First, has the lease on this building been extended?
Yes.
And has there been any consideration about the future use of this building and the possibilities to turn this area into more housing?
That is not for us to decide. That is for the landowner, property owner to decide. And I do not know what their intentions are.
I understand it's not for us to decide, but we could perhaps encourage, collaborate, discuss. I don't know. It's such a great site.
It's zoned institutional.
In response to waste, I do remember when the addition was put on this building, you notice we've got two staircases. That was consciously done so that perhaps it could be turned into a duplex or a fourplex. Things along those lines when the rentals, but that's a different owner now, so two different owners since then. My question was, forgive me if I missed it in your presentation, has the roofing material actually on site?
I'm not sure. It gets formed on site, so it just shows up as a big roll of aluminum, and then gets formed as extrude and rolled out.
And I hate the word oil canning. I mean, it's what everybody's objecting to, the sort of slight rippling looking.
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, to drive by it and look at it and see the different sort of color gradations it gives, it doesn't look too bad.
I actually like it.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, if versus a plain rigid piece of metal, but
You're now unmuted.
Point of access.
Yes, Councillor Jurgensen?
Sorry, I'm lost as to which building Councillor Wake was referring to, because I was under the impression we were discussing the community center.
Yes, Councillor Wake's question was in regards to the current municipal hall.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep. Councillor Wake.
Sorry, I did have a second question, which was on the second topic. Is there any possibility members of council could attend for observation the EOC exercise?
I don't think it's appropriate I think I think it's a good idea to have council members be aware of the EOC and how it operates, but the exercise itself, I think, is best to be left to staff. In an actual EOC event, council would is what we call the policy group, and they make decisions around the scope, scale, budget, those types of things, but best to not be in the EOC itself. And so I do understand, and I like the idea of council being aware and being informed, but I also want to respect staff and for this exercise in particular, being the first one that we've done, is an opportunity to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. And so I think it's best to have as little pressure on them as possible. And I know you are all very comfortable to be around for myself, but I think there may be a heightened level of performance anxiety if council were there.
Thanks. I agree with what CEO just said there, that's the best way to do it. My question is, are you filming this, both for training purposes, like review purposes, and also potentially for us to have a look at after and see how it operates?
That's a great question. I don't know. I'll ask our consultant.
I think they should be doing it, to be honest with you, but yeah, by all means ask.
We have about 12 non-municipal staff external participants in it, so it's going to be quite an event. And so I know that the consultant will have a number of people from their team showing up, so maybe that's an option. Definitely valued.
Yeah, there is. Thanks.
Councillor Morse.
so is, when you say non-Bowen people, are you thinking of like, would BC Ferries come or Coast Guard or?
No, I don't think we're getting those folks there, but we have, so there's probably 3 or 4 consultant members. There's members from the North Shore Emergency Management Team, and there's members, so the ESS folks, the Emergency Support Services folks, the RCMP will have a presence, folks like that. But I don't think BC Ferries is showing up for this one.
Well, they'll be late anyway.
Or cancel.
All right, if there's no further questions, let's move along to new business, looking at, correspondence. 9.1, letter of support for REDIP grant application, Relational Community Database Feasibility Study. This comes to us from a member of our Community Economic Development Committee that I believe is in a grant application in conjunction with Gabriola and the Rural Islands Economic Partnership Society, and is just looking for a letter of support from our council in support of this grant, which appears to be some technological system between islands to increase collaboration and cooperation. We don't have actually anybody here who can answer questions about it. It's just the request and the staff comments stand on their own. Councillor Giddey?
Prepared to move the recommendation.
Right, so the recommendation's been moved. Second?
No, I got questions.
Councillor Wake, second.
I'll second.
Okay. And then Councillor Morse first on the discussion list.
Well, I'm a little confused as to just exactly who or what Social Cogs is. And they say society, but are they registered society under the Societies Act? They appear to have been a major recipient of the funds that were being raised by the Thrive Grant last year. And I guess I'm just wondering where that Thrive application is at. They asked for 4,000 from us and we gave them 2, I believe, but all the expenses for the design and development of the platform were going to Social Cogs. So I'm just wondering, did they get the Van City grant and is, just what Social Cogs is? And I guess I'm not concerned, trying to figure out if they're a business or not, and if it's a business, then are we, by supporting this, contrary to the community charter, supporting a business? So I'm not comfortable with the application, so I won't be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Wake?
My question was just, it's the first time I've heard of social cause. So I'm just wondering what it is. Can anybody answer that?
I'm not clear. I understood that Mr. Dymkovsky was supposed to be here today to make public comments, but is not.
Is there a time sensitivity to this grant application?
The letter, I believe, is due today. But I also have the same question about the nature of the organization and whether we are supporting a business. Comment from staff, or are you equally in the dark?
No, I'm equally in the dark. I'm sorry, Mayor. Yeah.
No, that's totally fine. Okay. Any further discussion before we call the question on this one? Call the question. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, raise your hand, say nay.
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 Councillor Saunders, Wake, Morse, Leonard. What was your?
I kept my hand down because I really like the idea. I think I'll support it. I mean, I'm with Judy.
How about Councillor Jurgensen?
He was a nay.
He was a nay.
Audio now unmuted.
A nay because of there's lack of information.
And just to note on this, one thing I did say on this through the committee coordinator was that I'd be happy to write a letter as the mayor saying that this seems like a good idea and I would be willing to bring it forward to council if the opportunity presents itself or it's appropriate. But I wasn't sure about full council approval of something like this. So there is opportunities for us to support this as we do start to learn more about it. Moving on to section 11, new business. I'll talk about Metro Vancouver and TransLink both in one. Headline for people that are probably watching is there's no news on Cape Roger Curtis at all. It wasn't discussed at the board level. The big news coming out of TransLink is the announcement of their first 3 bus rapid transit corridors. The one that would likely affect Bowen Island and possibly many of our commuters is the development of a rapid bus between Park Royal and Metrotown, with the eventuality of having a full dedicated bus rapid transit between Park Royal and Metrotown. Any other issues? There's interesting points in there that don't really relate to Bowen Island, so I would encourage anyone interested to take a look at the agendas, minutes, and recordings of those meetings. Unless there's any questions, I'll hand it over to our Islands trustees to give us an update on Islands Trust business.
Audio now unmuted.
Sorry, Mayor Leonard, just.
Yes.
My Zoom cut out when you were mentioning what that route that would affect Bowen Islanders was, and I was wondering if you could just let me know which one that was.
Oh, right. So there's going to be the development of rapid bus extension between Park Royal and Metrotown.
Thank you.
with the eventuality of having it be a full bus rapid transit route, which would have its own dedicated lanes all the way from Park Royal to Metro Town, which would be a great way, I think, of commuting all the way out to Burnaby, as we don't have a direct link to that part of the city versus downtown.
Thank you.
Mute Mark.
And over to our Islands trustees. Trustee Fast.
Sure, just that Trust Council meets December 5th to the 7th. The agenda is available on the website now, and anybody's welcome to watch that in live stream. And they have a public comments section too, so you can, just as at this meeting, you can Zoom in. The meeting will be held in Victoria, so Trustee Getty and I will presume, oh no, well, anyway, we'll be in Victoria. Will's coming.
Same. Same, ditto. Any questions for our trustees? Councillor Wade?
Sorry, what was the date of that meeting?
December 5th to the 7th. It usually starts halfway through the Tuesday. Most of us travel in the morning. And it runs into the evening on one of the days, usually the middle one. Not sure this time. And it ends sort of Friday at noon if you get the business done.
Great. And moving on to question period. Yes. 4.6, that did not go on the consent agenda, correct?
It did?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Check. Didn't have a check mark.
So question period, opportunity for members of the public to request clarification or ask a follow-up question relating to an item discussed at the meeting. Is there anyone online? No one here in the audience? And with that, I look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Getty, seconded by Councilor Wake. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Carries. We'll take a 5-minute